but now it is slime time. Talking about the mercurial mold, the amalgam. You know, conduit was also pretty versatile. This one, I think it's got a beat in versatility. This is probably the most versatile elite spec I can think of.
Whoa.
You know, Cal's lit
No
it in here,
spoilers.
so you see the UI. You can see 3 blank slots. They might look familiar. They're basically like utility slots. Cal can show you the menu. Pop it up. You can pick any of those. So we have 7 more skills, 3 slots, a lot of permutations here. Before we go into what they do, we can talk about the new F5. It's going to be evolve. So if Cal hovers over it, it's just pretty simple.
What does it
It says
do?
evolve.
It evolves.
So this one, you're going to kind of like merge with your slime, you know, become one, and it's going to give you bonuses based on the morph skills that you have selected in your F2 through F4 slots. So baseline, all it does is just give you a bit of an attribute increase, nothing special, but the real bonuses are going to come as we get into those morph skills. Quick like side note is that you can see that the F1 is still not selectable. That one is just going to be a normal healing tool belt skill. We decided to keep it there because, for one, medkit exists. A really big part of medkit is having that F1 mending heal. But another part is that we do have trait triggers based on healing tool belt slots now, and we want to keep that as something we can work with. So we didn't want you to have to decide, oh, I need this skill in this F1 slot because that's the lowest cooldown, I'm going to proc those more. We just wanted you to put where you felt comfortable putting those skills as you would utilities. But we can get into it. So the more skills are going to be divided. There are a couple defensive ones and a couple offensive ones. So the first one is going to be the defensive protocol protect. When it's used, it's just going to give you a block for a duration. Pretty simple, pretty good. Having a block in your tool belt slot is, you know, pretty powerful. But you also see at the bottom of that tooltip, you have the resilient strain. And these strain bonuses are what I talked about, how it's going to upgrade evolve. So you see here that resilient strain grants you a barrier and resistance when you evolve. So it's a pretty big barrier. This one's super defensive, as I keep saying. This one's probably the strongest defense you can get out of all of the morph skills. But that's just going to be one of the 3 bonuses you get, so it's already pretty strong. We can move on to the next one, though, is going to be Defensive Protocol Cleanse. It does what it says. It's going to cleanse you. It's going to convert damaging conditions to barrier and non-damaging conditions to protection. So it's going to kind of single out both. So if you have like a lot of non-damaging on you, but some like pretty heavy damaging conditions, you'll be able to get that. This is what you want to take if you're going into like maybe a PvE fight, has a lot of conditions like Greer, or if you're fighting maybe like a condition conduit in competitive modes, you can take this. Its strain bonus is going to be the replicating strain. It's going to give you a heal over time and alacrity, kind of like more sustained healing bonuses when you use that as opposed to the more immediate defensive bonuses from protect. Good note on this skill is it's also a stun break. You're losing some of your tool belts, and a lot of the good ones are stun breaks. So we wanted to make sure you had the options to take stun breaks with part of these more skills. And I can kind of open up even more normal utility options because sometimes on engineer you were kind of constrained of what you could take because you need some stun breaks. But now you can maybe take utility skills that don't have a stun break tool belt because you can get it here by selecting these specific more skills. The next one is going to be the last defensive one, Defensive Protocol Thorns. It's also going to be a stun break. This one is more dubiously labeled a defense. It is pretty offensive in what it does. It gives you a buff that's similar to, people might remember a long time ago, there was a boon called Retaliation. It did damage to people when they hit you. This one is going to be a pretty similar effect. The thorns are going to kind of react and strike when you're struck, dealing damage to enemies nearby you. Pretty important to note that this does have like a melee range requirement. So if there's like ranger rapid firing you from far away, you're not going to deal any damage to them. But if you're in the thick of it, maybe in like a World v World situation, getting hit a lot, this one's going to pump out a lot of damage.
Notably, there is kind of a limit to how often it will retaliate, correct?
Yes. There is a small interval, so you can't do like infinite damage if you're getting hit a lot, but it still does have strong damaging capabilities. Its strain bonus is going to be the Rapacious Strain. This is similar effect to some other buffs we have in the game. When you strike foes, you're going to strike them additional time. So it's kind of like One Wolf Pack, Shattering Ice on Catalyst we have, just generating some extra damage. So this one's really, like if you want a defense, a stun break, but you don't want a full defense, still want to be offensive aggressive, maybe in PvE situations, this one's a pretty good pickup for that. But then we can move into the more offensive ones. The first one is going to be offensive protocol Pierce. You're going to create a spike and then jab out with it, stunning enemies. Big note on this one is that it is unblockable. It has a really high wind-up time, so it's pretty easy to see coming, but if an enemy is like shield blocking right in front of you and you've decided to take this skill, it can be a pretty good counter to that. Just very offensively minded. It is loaded with CC. Its strain bonus is going to be when you evolve, you're going to stun nearby enemies after a delay. So if Cal evolves with it on, you'll see that there's a little white circle, and after a delay, another bang, it's going to stun people. So, if you want to do some break bar damage in PvE, this is the one you slot on. Get a lot of combo potential as well in competitive modes. CC someone, use some other of the offense we're going to get into. A lot of potential here. Then the next one is going to be offensive protocol Obliterate. This is probably like the most offensive one you have. It's going to swing a giant sword. I think my direction to the artist was like, make this sword cartoonishly large. You can see a really cool streak on it. But it's going to deal a lot of damage, deal a lot of bleeding, and it has a special mechanic that I don't think we've done before, and that is going to break your enemy's barrier. So that's like all of it. So if you're up against like maybe Ceres in PvE that has a lot of barrier built up on it, or against a Scourge in competitive modes, you can use a skill and break their barrier before you deal the damage. So specifically really good if you know you're going to fight someone who has barrier access, but also just does a ton of damage. Its strain bonus is going to be Titanic Strain. Evolving gives you might and also increases the effectiveness of might. It's going to be like 10 might stacks and also make that might even better. So if you have 25 anyways in PvE, it's still going to juice you. Pretty good damage increase, like I said. If you're looking for damage, it's going to be the one with the most throughput there.
I think you should make the sword even larger.
I agree. It already is like cartoonish. Like I think when you're like a Norn, like it scales like most things do to races, and it's like incredibly big there. So the next one is going to be offensive protocol Shred. This one you're going to throw out 3 discs. You saw this in the video that are going to cripple enemies, and if you hit all 3 of them, it's going to apply and immobilize. So this one's kind of a gap closer. The spec isn't going to be as fast as Scrapper with its super speed or Hollowsmith with like Photon Forge 2. So this is a good, like if you want to make sure you're chasing enemies, this is a skill to take. To go along with that, its upgrade bonus is going to be the Predator Strain, just giving you quickness and super speed when you evolve. 2 pretty good bonuses to chase people down and deal some damage pretty fast. Then the last morph skill we have access to is going to be offensive protocol Demolish. This one you're going to swing a hammer around, and then at the end you're going to smash it down. Again, we saw this in the video. This one is really focused around doing heavy AoE damage. So if you're trying to cleave a lot of mobs, if you're in World v World, you want to do a lot of damage to the group in front of you, this is a skill you take. To go along with that, when you're in the cut of things, it can be kind of dangerous. So the Berserker Strain is going to give you stability and also heal from outgoing damage. So while you're doing that, you're healing yourself, staying up, making sure you don't die while you're in the middle of things. The spec is, pretty much a bruiser spec. There's going to be a lot of defenses baked in and a lot of ways to deal damage, especially from melee range. So everything's trying to synergize around that. And then, with all of those in mind, you can see why Evolve is a pretty powerful button. Getting 3 of those bonuses we just went over whenever you want, customizing it for the situation, makes it a pretty good cooldown to have. It's really like a go time button. You're going to press that and people are going to be scared. But that kind of covers the general way you're going to play with Profession Mechanics. We can move into the utilities, which are going to be stances. Important to hydrate. But the heal is going to be mitotic state. You're going to command your cells to separate, regenerate. It's going to heal you over time pretty rapidly when you use it. And then it's got a little hook that is going to increase its effectiveness while you have barrier. As Cal's been pressing the skills, you can see that you're getting some barrier when you get more skills, so it's pretty easy to trigger that. We'll get into that when we talk about the traits. But this one, it's not going to give you like a burst heal like you normally do. It's going to be a heal over time. And so it's kind of vulnerable to pressure. If people are hitting you while it's healing, they're going to break your barrier pretty fast. So you're going to lose out on that. You might not get the, direct healing that you might get from like an AED or like the normal elixir heal, but it is a pretty strong heal over time, so really good sustain benefit. But then talk about the heal, we can talk about its healed tool belt as it's going to have one because you don't get a morph in that slot. It's going to be symbiotic shielding. It's going to be instant cast, give you barrier mag aura. Pretty good defensive cooldown, get that barrier to trigger the healing. Magnetic aura, as we talked about, not a lot of range or mobility in the kit, and so having that little counter pressure to use just instantly is a pretty good thing to have in the kit. Then we can go on to the just normal utilities. There's going to be 4 of them based on the states of matter. You saw liquid state in the video, and it's like super cool, but there are also other ones. The first one we're going to talk about is solid state. That one is going to be a CC ability. You're going to leap up in the air, harden yourself, give yourself some stability, and then you're going to crash down, stunning enemies. Then you're going to get a buff for a little bit that increases outgoing stun duration. So this pairs pretty well with Pierce we talked about. If you have Throw Mine, if you have Hammer On, just if you need to do break bar damage, start with this and then throw all your things out. In competitive modes, getting stability and stunning people, pretty strong thing to have. Really good initiation tool. Then next one, we can talk about liquid state. You're going to melt down into a puddle. Most importantly, you can move while being a puddle. Then while you're in that state, you're going to deal damage around you, kind of ticking damage and poisoning people that stand on top of you, crippling them, making sure they don't have much mobility. But this one's going to be kind of a short defensive cooldown mostly. You're going to evade while you're under there. So it's going to be a shorter duration than something like Elixir S, but it's also going to have a lower cooldown, be a bit more usable, and also you can keep up some pressure while you're, ticking poison onto people that stand on top of you. Then the next one is going to be gaseous state. You will sublimate, vocab word, breaking stuns, and then you're also going to remove movement impairing conditions and prevent their reapplication because you're kind of like in a gassy, airy state, so how can people immobilize you? You're not going to be completely incorporeal like maybe mist form, but you are going to be a bit hard to hit, so this has a little bit of a new mechanic where incoming strikes against you are going to be glancing blows. So it's basically like as if anyone that hit you had a weakness on them. So can't be crit, really good damage reduction tool. Not completely invulnerable, you can still be CC'd during this, but again, pretty good defensive cooldown. Then the last one is going to be plasmatic state. This one is going to be the most offensive option you have. You're going to strike out twice, giving yourself a pretty good damage buff, and also doing heavy damage from the strikes themselves. This is a pretty high modifier, so usually you want to stack it, you want to evolve, and then use this, stack all your damage multipliers. I think in PvE the spec is going to have a more bursty damage profile, where you're going to want to save your cooldowns for when you have evolve up, and stack all of them at once, get a really high damage burst off. So managing those cooldowns is going to be kind of important. And then competitive modes, this one is going to be, if you want just more damage from the kit, this is a pretty good button to have. Then lastly, we can talk about the elite. It's going to be flux state. You're going to kind of command your slime to swirl around you, creating a magnetic field. You're going to initially pull people in and then create like a storm of those like spiky metal things you see going on that's going to take damage and apply bleeding. So pretty good control thing to start with, and then as you pull enemies in, there's going to be a storm that damages around you. So pretty simple elite skill. Again, pretty good to have up when you're bursting things. Simple what you want out of the slot. That kind of covers all the utilities, so we can move into the traits here quickly. Yep, the first one is going to be Experimental Union, explains what the spec does. That's, can move on to the first interesting one. Is going to be Hybrid Vigor. You're going to gain Vitality, and then this is where the barrier was coming from as Cal was pressing the skills. When you gain Barrier when you use a Morph skill. This one's kind of built in Sustain, kind of the heat therapy equivalent of this spec. Doesn't give Vigor, so maybe it's like an unplayable thing, but Hybrid Vigor is like a biology term, so get educated, I guess. Then we can move to the next minor, is Willing Host. This one, when you use a Morph skill, you're going to get yourself a damage increase. Again, kind of like the baked-in damage increase for the spec. This buff, when you use it, it's not going to stack duration, it's going to reset duration, so it's a bit of an incentive to spread out your cooldowns to make sure you always have this buff up. You don't want to maybe slam all your Morph skills at once and then run out of the damage bonus. You want to make sure you have spread them out so you can, make sure that buff is always on you, getting the most value out of it. Then going to the Adept tier, this tier is kind of a theme. They're all going to be defensive. None of them are going to give you a damage bonus, but it's going to be how do you want to pick that defense. The first one, Stainless Steel, is going to be oriented more towards conditions. When you use one of the stance skills or evolve, you're going to convert conditions into boons. So if you're going into a place where you would want that cleanse morph against, again, Greer, any Condi boss, or in competitive modes, this one is probably the one you want to pick. The one below it is going to be Innervating Alloy. Heal every second while you have Barrier. Heal when you evolve. So this has pretty good innate synergy with that Hybrid Vigor trait we talked about. This one is not going to provide you an active defense, but it is going to give you sustain over time. So if you can't really decide if you want the top or the bottom, this one's a good middle ground to have, always useful. The bottom one is going to be protection against kind of burst damage, that strike damage, harden chrome, more skills, and evolve, grant protection to yourself. So it can potentially be a lot of little triggers of protection. So it's good with that Inventions trait, anti-corrosion plating. Get a lot of triggers off of that. But if you're up against heavy strike damage, this is a trait that's probably going to give you a lot of value compared to the other two. Then, you know, the interesting level of these traits is going to increase if we go with the tiers. The Master trait going to be a bit more interesting. Grandmaster is pretty spicy, so just tease you with that as you talk about the Master tier. The first one is going to be Carbolic Composition. This one is going to focus on poison application. It's going to cause all your amalgam skills, which are just any skill that's special to the amalgam, all the morph skills, all the utilities, on hit, they're going to apply poison. And then you're also going to get a pretty big duration increase for poison. Engineer has pretty big duration increases for both bleeding and burning in the firearm straight line, but poison was kind of not there. So this hopefully make it easier to condition duration cap, specifically with some condition builds, and also be a more biological focus on applying poison and just getting some extra damage, enabling some condition amalgam builds here. The middle one is going to be Mercurial Tendencies. Disabling an enemy reduces the cooldown of Evolve. This is a pretty powerful effect if you can get a lot of CCs in your build. This one is specifically going to give a lot of synergy towards hammers, I think. You know, if you're a Juggernaut owner, you want to use it with this spec. And hammer can get a lot of CC procs off. So again, using that, you get Evolve off cooldown more, can mold your rotations based on getting those CCs, match it up a bit better with Plasmatic State damage bonus. Should be pretty interesting. Something you definitely want to be capitalizing around on a damage amalgam build. And then the last one is going to be Silver Lining. It's gonna do what it says. There's gonna be a bit of a downside, but a pretty good upside. Evolving no longer inherits the bonus of strains. So it makes so all you do when you evolve is get that stat bonus. But instead, morph skills are going to grant their strain bonuses at a reduced duration. So this one shouldn't give you a lot more uptime on those bonuses, but a lot more flexibility of when you use them. So if you do that hammer spin, as Cal's doing with it, you're going to get stability at the start. It's a pretty good time to get stability is when you're doing that long cast, and also that healing buff. So you're going to have it when you use Obliterate, get that damage bonus when you want it. So yeah, like I said, just a bit more flexibility. Might be better in competitive modes where it's risky to get all those bonuses all at once, but this is more spread out, but again, lower duration. You might be thinking with this trait that like, okay, Evolve kind of sucks if I take this trait, but we haven't gotten to the Grandmasters there. So all the Grandmasters are going to kind of change what Evolve does a bit and make it so the button that's already interesting is like super interesting. So talk about them, we go to Symbiotic Synergy, the top trait, which has the best trait icon in the game. It's just a little ooze guy that's smiling. But what it's going to do is it's going to cause Evolve to recharge your Morph skills, and then Morph skills deal increased strike damage. So recharging all three of those abilities is pretty strong. Getting all of that damage back can get your block back, stun breaks back when you evolve. Makes it a pretty good cooldown to have. Pretty big strike modifier for PvE. All these traits, everything you're seeing on the stream is like kind of split for competitive modes. You're seeing the PvE balance. But again, making that cooldown, kind of want to use all your morph skills, then evolve, and then have them all back for that moment of power. Pretty strong moment. And then I think all the other Grandmasters are going to be strong as well, compete with that. We can skip to the bottom to talk about Double Helix. Evolve is going to grant an additional charge and grant a bonus to its increased stats. So this one is going to give you double the evolves, which is pretty good, and make it a bit stronger, getting that stat bonus to 15%. And having two charges means that you can kind of choose when you want to evolve. Again, when we talk about Silver Lining, some of these bonuses are things you want to time specifically. So just having that extra charge and knowing you can use one of them off cooldown, but always having another one when you want that stability, that resistance, Anything that you want, that quickness, super speed, on demand, can be pretty powerful. This trait has a lot more burst potential. You can use 2 evolves back to back to get some really high bonuses, where I expect maybe Symbiotic Synergy is a more sustained damage option. But then there's one last Grandmaster trait, and this one is potentially the most interesting. It's going to be Contagious Mutation. Strain enhancement effects are shared to nearby allies when activated with a reduced duration. So that's all the effects we just talked about. You give your allies the resistance, the quickness, the super speed. Even the special ones, you can give them that strike bonus from Rapacious Strain. You can give them increased might effectiveness. They're going to take a duration decrease. You're sacrificing a lot to take this trait. You're not going to get like the cooldown reduction from Evolve. You're not going to get the double charges. But if you're in a group situation, this is probably a really good trait to have. A lot of potential, a lot of things that this could just be broken. That's what betas are for. So very excited and interesting to see what people do with this trait. Gonna keep our eye on it for sure. It does work with Silver Lining, so if you have both Contagious Mutation and Silver Lining, you're going to share to allies when you use those morph skills, so just even more choosing when to give things. They are going to stack the duration bonuses, so I think it's like only 3 seconds you share to allies, but still pretty powerful application. You do have the ability to grant both quickness and alacrity if you take both of those, but you have to make a lot of sacrifices to do that, so potentially fine. We will see. But yeah, that is the Amalgam. Pretty good.